Wow, the Jeffree Star scandal just keeps getting worse and worse. For those of you who don't know, Jeffree has been accused of paying hush money to his alleged sexual assault victims from about a decade ago. New leaked documents show that he allegedly signed an agreement to pay one of his accusers 45 grand in hush money. Now, Kat Tenberg, the reporter who had initially first released the story of Jeffree's accusations, had also posted a screenshot of Jeffree signing a document that appeared to be the terms and conditions that came with the hush money offer. People were kind of speculating if these receipts and screenshots of the check were real. That wasn't until very recently when one of Jeffree's alleged victims, Chris Avery Burnett, had shared her side of the story with even more receipts. Burnett claimed that Jeffree Star in 2009 sent an anonymous email of a picture to her. She identified that the nude image was Star by an ice cream cone tattoo on his hand. This placed Star in his mid to early 20s at the time, sending explicit pics to someone who was 15 at the time. After ignoring the unsolicited email, Chris Avery Burnett and Jeffree Star publicly parted ways. It began when Chris requested publicly that Jeffree make a message of equality to the Make a Difference readers. Jeffree replied publicly, insulting Burnett, saying, "You are effing disgusting and nobody will ever take you seriously. Stop calling yourself fierce." After falling out with Jeffree, Burnett suffered a lot of online bullying from Star's followers and friends. Then Chris Avery Burnett exposed this year that Jeffree was trying to pay off accusers to retract their statements to Insider. Gage Arthur, another alleged victim of Jeffree's, was one of those who took the money allegedly. Chris had tweeted out her response to Jeffree's offer, stating, "Is it insomnia, or is it Jeffree tried to pay me 10k to shut my mouth, but instead it insulted me, so I gave Insider's cat and barge more dirt that I was going to originally, and now you have no choice but to face your past? Also, I was 15, you monster. So Jeffree Star, hi, how are ya? Also Jeffree Star, what are you going to sue me for, Jeffree? I know everything. Your lawyers said it sucked and they couldn't stop the story. Threaten me again and I'll consider legal matters myself, and that would be versus slander. What does your record say will happen?" Since the article in Insider was published, exposing everything about Jeffree Star's past, Jeffree blocked the journalist Kat, who wrote the story, and is yet to make any comments. So after Kat exposed in another article Jeffree Star allegedly paying 45 grand in hush money to one of his accusers to try and retract their statements, she received a lot of backlash. Chris Avery Burnett, however, commented on one of Kat's tweets with receipts stating, "To all those claiming Kat isn't as epic as she actually is because she didn't post the full document, here the effort is." And then Chris leaked the full confidential settlement agreement from Jeffree's attorney. Confidential settlement agreement. This confidential settlement agreement, the agreement, dated September the 25th, 2020, the effective date, is made and entered into by Andrew Arthur, Mr. Arthur, and Jeffree Star, Mr. Star. Mr. Arthur and Mr. Star may be referred to collectively as the parties. Mr. Arthur and Mr. Star may be referred to individually as a party for the consideration of mutual promises hereinafter stated, whereas Mr. Arthur and others provided certain statements to Business Insider in connection with the planned story about Mr. Star, whereas in connection with the statements made by Mr. Arthur and others, Business Insider has accused Mr. Star of sexual misconduct, tapering individuals, drugging individuals, throwing a knife at an individual, and sending crude photographs, whereas Mr. Star denies all the allegations made against him. However, the mere publication of such spurious allegations, no matter how false, could have a very negative effect on someone with Mr. Star's large public following, company, and employees. Whereas, after talking to more friends and thinking back over events that occurred more than 10 years ago, Mr. Arthur recognises that he was not remembering things correctly, may have misinterpreted things, and that his statements to Business Insider and those made by others within his circle are not reliable or correct, and therefore has agreed to retract his communications to Business Insider and no longer serve as a source for any story about Mr. Star. Whereas, in an effort to resolve this dispute, the parties agreed to a confidential term sheet dated September 23rd, 2020, which sets out the terms of the settlement enumerated below. Whereas, on September the 23rd, 2020, Mr. Arthur emailed Kat Tenberg at Business Insider retracting his communications, explaining that he misremembered and misinterpreted things, and informing Ms. Tenberg that Business Insider does not have authority to publish anything he discussed with her. Whereas, immediately after sending the above email to Ms. Tenberg, Mr. Arthur sent a text message to Ms. Tenberg as follows: "Please confirm that you received my email." Whereas, without admitting any facts or liability, the parties now desire to fully and finally resolve this dispute amicably on the terms and conditions set forth in this agreement. Whereas, the parties expressly agree that the term sheet previously exchanged between them, this agreement, and the terms of their settlement shall forever remain confidential and shall not be disclosed to any person or entity that is not a party to this agreement for any reason, except as required by law or per court order. Now therefore, in consideration of the mutual agreement and covenants contained herein, the parties hereby agree as follows. Communication to Business Insider. Mr. Arthur shall not engage in any further written or telephone communications with Ms. Tenbarge or anyone else at Business Insider unless first discussed and agreed with Mr. Starr or his representatives. Settlement payment. With 2 business days of signing this agreement, Mr. Arthur shall be paid $25,000. If Business Insider does not publish the article about Mr. Starr within 3 months of the effective date, Mr. Arthur shall receive an additional $25,000. Anthony Venity and Danny Artaud have also retracted their statements to Business Insider. Mr. Arthur shall receive an additional $10,000 for contacting each of Mr. Venity and Ms. Artaud for a total of an additional $20,000. Corporation. If Business Insider or others continue to make efforts to investigate the claims related to Mr. Arthur's allegations against Mr. Starr, Mr. Arthur agrees to cooperate with Mr. Starr in responding to those inquiries in a manner to be discussed and agreed to between the parties. If Business Insider nonetheless publishes a story about Mr. Starr, Mr. Arthur will issue a public statement in a manner to be discussed and agreed between the parties, expressing that Business Insider did not have the authority to make or publish any statements attributed to Mr. Arthur, and that he does not agree with them or believe them to be true, and will otherwise cooperate with Mr. Starr in responding to the published allegations. Furthermore, because Mr. Arthur believes that all the postings about Mr. Starr on StickyDrama.com that reference Mr. Arthur are false and untrue, Mr. Arthur further agrees to make responsible efforts to encourage Christopher Stone to remove such postings from StickyDrama.com. Confidentiality and non-disclosure. The parties agree that the discussions and negotiations surrounding the team sheet and this agreement are in furtherance of settlement discussions. Accordingly, all communications relating to the term sheet, this agreement and the settlement, and any and all drafts of the term sheet and agreement are entitled to the protections of Rule 408 of the Federal Rules of Evidence and state law equivalents. And then basically the rest of this legal jargon pretty much says that the person who signs it can't open their mouth when asked about Jeffree Star. So Catch, the reporter for Insider, is currently arguing with fans of Jeffree over the validity of the messages that Gage sent to Jeffree's other accusers about getting paid to shut their mouths. Here we can see someone said, "That's convenient, you could just block out the name and face, and we would still be able to see these are genuine. Doesn't explain the missing date stamp. Please keep in mind these have all been reviewed by a team of editors, lol. The date stamp is at the very top of the conversation on Facebook Messenger, and I don't have permission to publicly share the entire convo." Chris Avery Burnett had responded, "LMFAO, here you go buddy." Here we can see the message from Gage Arthur to Chris that said, "Hey, did you talk to Insider about Jeffree?" And then we can see a missed call. "You may type to me but not call me. How did you come across this information? 1 second, stay on here. The events I discussed with Business Insider were from many years ago. I'm not sure I'm remembering things correctly, and I may have misinterpreted things. I've decided to retract my communications to Business Insider and told them they don't have authority to publish anything I discussed with them. To resolve all of this, Jeffree Star has agreed to pay you 10 grand if you choose to do the same. Send a number and I'll send it over to you if you want." Chris Avery Burnett had then tweeted, "Jeffree Star has not only been accused of sexual assault on a minor, but is now accused of filming it. This would be child and a very serious criminal act. Jeffree Star must face his own actions immediately." Exactly, Gage. Y'all, I'll find a middle ground. Have you heard of Jeffree having cameras in his room? I actually have. I never told anyone about what happened. People started telling me saying they'd seen it. Jeffree was sending it around back in the day, and they're all saying that never happened now. So I'm kind of thrown off, but I bet that video exists. Yeah, he doesn't care I messaged them, letting them know this all didn't seem fair to me, and I'm stressed and they feel it's all settled. Like it's his choice how I feel, or like I'd care about that shit. Off the record, don't expose or shame a victim you know. But that's effed up, right? Of course, he does not care. He didn't even have to reply to the story, let alone care about the victims of his. His attorneys had me send you the message too. That seems shady on their part. I know, haha. Chris Avery Burnett had then tweeted, "Jeffree Star plans to force Gage to speak public as directed by Jeffree Star Cosmetics. I think I'm getting what you're referring to." And here we can see a message that someone from the Jeffree Star Cosmetics team had sent Gage. First, Gage says, "Worth something to Jeffree's case. If it goes further, I'll read over the email and get back to you though." Okay, this agreement just adds to the first one, right? It doesn't void that one or anything. I assume y'all are being shysty. be. But some lawyers can be just covering my ass with questions. Aren't being. Right, just adds. Number 4 in the document says that except as modified in this document, which is just to add that paragraph, the original agreement remains in full force and effect. So it's the agreement you signed before, plus this additional paragraph. You have no obligations going forward under the agreement other than to maintain confidentiality and potentially put out a statement, if we wanted to, but like I said, likely won't, about these allegations that ran. If the case ended up in court, it wouldn't. You wouldn't have further obligations under this agreement. Jeffree Star and Jeffree Star Cosmetics thinks $10,000 in an NDA as compensation for rape. Gage had said, I don't know, they'd be lame too. I understand Jeffree can be intimidating and play a power game, but honestly his actions will catch up to him and I would just tell you the truth. Gage, Jeffree might have money now, but he is still that same headstrong piece of shit from back then. He is weak and sloppy. Yeah, he doesn't care I messaged them, letting them know this all didn't seem fair to me, and I'm stressed and they feel it's all settled. Like it's his choice how I feel. Shane Dawson, you gave Jeffree Star the power he needed to ignore his past for as long as he has. What are your thoughts on all this? Let me know in the comments.